Down for me, fellas.
Calling an audible here. Was going to talk about the Jesse Smollett case or maybe the Ghislaine Maxwell case, but maybe we spend some more time on that tomorrow. I did want to instead talk about how to keep schools safe. Yesterday, we had another school shooting, this time in Michigan. 3 individuals dead, suspect in custody. And as you heard at the top of the hour with ABC News, there were even rumors about a potential school shooting that apparently authorities were never notified about. So we'll obviously hear more about that. But that is in Michigan. Here in Springfield, we had a stabbing last week outside of a school where a student was murdered. And that student, an 18-year-old, laid to rest yesterday. How do we keep our students safe in schools? 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here on the WMAY morning news feed. Now, one thing that we heard last night from the Springfield City Council was a conversation about the coordination between city law enforcement and even paramedics with the fire department responding to any incidents that may happen at Springfield Public Schools. And the conversation talked a bit about having more law enforcement on the scene, having undercover police there. But how do you fund that? There's also an effort to try to get more metal detectors or metal wands at schools for kids entering the schools. But is this a direction that we want to go when it comes to our schools? Should they be a place that is very strict to get into? Or should it be more of an open type of atmosphere, an environment that fosters openness, but does that make it a soft target? So I want to hear from you. What are your suggestions? 217-629-7970. Again, 217-629-7970. If you want to chime in live and local, you can do so. Or you can also email me, bishoponair@gmail.com. Again, bishoponair@gmail.com. But the best way to do it is live and local. Call in right now at 217-629-7970. And this isn't just about urban schools. This is about schools all across the country, because I think too often we hear some of these stories from more rural areas as well. With the school shooting that happened yesterday, a lot of details coming out about that, about how the father apparently had purchased the gun for the suspect 4 days beforehand, and the students grabbing different types of tools that they were going to use to try to protect themselves. So pretty alarming story, but how do we address this? Is it more of a systemic problem of not having respect for life or not having respect for firearms? Or is it something else entirely different? Maybe what we heard again with ABC News at the top of the hour was there were rumors of a school shooting happening, but apparently law enforcement was never notified of this. So what should we do? Is it going to be more resources, more police state in our schools? Is that the direction we want to go? Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Good morning, Greg. I'm sure it's obvious to anyone that's looking at it that this isn't happening in private schools, just in public schools. Now, why is that? In private schools, we don't have police officers there having to police the children. And what are they doing that's different other than paying for an education? And you'll notice that you're not having these things. What's the difference in between the private school and the public schools?
And I haven't seen that data to show that there is a difference in where this happened. Of course, I mean, we hear the news stories regularly, but when it comes to just other types of violence, even school fights, I mean, that type of thing can help foster some of this type of behavior. We've heard in the past somebody, a young student brought a handgun to school, shot 3 people. Nobody died in that instance several weeks ago. But people say, oh, he was being bullied. And ultimately that individual, that student, faced some charges, but some saying that didn't go far enough. But how do we address this? I don't think it's just a public-private school issue. However, there might be a push to allow for more school choice so that parents can maybe get vouchers to send their kids to a school that might have a better atmosphere for their students. But that, again, would take away from the public schools and the resources they have to be able to maintain the safety standards that they need in those schools. So how do we address school safety for kids? Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Look, I'm far from a Bible thumper, but it's undeniable that as society has moved away from faith in God, that these shootings and civility have dropped. I think we need to return to the just teaching people how to be good people.
Well, is it just about religion, or is it more about family units and the family structure? Do you think that plays a role in this as well? And
Look,
again,
I've never.
not just for mass shooters at schools, but even just for kids getting involved in violence. Period, be it fights or be it whatever.
Yeah, I mean, whether you believe in God or not, I think the Bible or religion itself teaches you be a good person, love your neighbor, uh, you know, treat other people how you want to be treated. And we've moved away from that as a society. You don't have to believe in a higher power or God or anything, but the teachings are what is important, and we've moved away from those. And we need to stop maybe teaching a history class or something and start teaching civility and how to be a good human in life and how to
Well, I
teach
don't
the
know if we
value of
stop
life.
teaching history classes. Maybe we pick some other type of extracurricular to stop teaching. But no, I think you're right. Maybe there's some other avenue where we can foster a better culture within kids. Maybe keeping them away from social media. Maybe keeping them away from the vitriol that we hear on the nightly news, talking heads, and cable TV. Maybe we try to again just foster a better sense of community. And this, of course, is all stemming from what happened at Lanphier High School with a stabbing death, but also yesterday, a school shooting out of Michigan with 3 students dead. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Well, great morning, first of all. I don't know if it's all has to do with religion. I still think the upbringing that you get from home has a lot to do with how the child turns out. I don't care what anybody says. What you get at home that's what you're going to get from a child. But the one thing we do need to do is work together. I didn't like some of the comments I heard from the city council when it comes to do we need more officers at school or metal detectors? The school district needs to decide, and they need to pay for it. It's in their budget and all
And
that.
there was and that conversation really stemmed from, like Alderman Hanauer, for instance, saying that, hey, they're an elected board over there. They're elected to deal with that issue. We're elected to deal with city issues. But others were making the point that, listen, what happens at the school bleeds out into the community and becomes a city problem.
Plus, the other problem is if they don't want to help out the school district, you got to remember the school district has to okay any new TIF districts or any TIF districts that you want to renew.
That's right.
And you really don't want to try and make this an us versus them deal. I think that's what the city council is trying to do. And I just don't think that's right. That's not a good way to do that.
That's an interesting point. You don't want to try to sow that division because the city's going to need the school district to sign on to TIF districts, for instance. So, yeah, interesting point. I appreciate that. 217-629-7970. We'll take one more call here about what you think needs to be done to make schools safer. Is it increasing a police state presence with metal detectors? And who knows? Maybe the next step is having full body scans like they do at the airports or whatever the case may be. What do you think? How do we address this? Is that the right approach, or is it a more kind of systemic community-based approach? Good morning. And that would have been the last call, but you can chime in at 217-629-7970. And I'm not saying it's an either or an or prospect here, but you have to look at everything in totality. And do we have short-term fixes to provide a sense of security that's just in the school? What happens when it spills out of the school, like we saw at Lanphier? It's something that I think we have to really focus on because, kids are the future. There's no question about it. And giving them a prime place to learn that's safe, especially after the past year that they had to do remote learning and their learning was substantially diminished because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the government's response to that, shutting things down. There's been a lot of mental health issues that have sprung up out of all of that. So we should probably brace for the undoubtable impacts and the effects of that last year of learning loss and its impacts on the psyche of children moving forward. So I think we'll have to have this conversation again in the near future. It is the WMAY Morning News